Long before oceans swallowed mountains, before rain ever fell from the sky, before the earth knew judgment, the world stood in a fragile balance between creation and corruption. Humanity had multiplied across the land. Cities had formed, families had grown. But something was deeply wrong. The Bible describes that era with words both simple and terrifying. The wickedness of man was great upon the earth, and every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil continually. Violence filled the land. Injustice became normal. Truth was replaced by desire. And the world God had declared very good had become unrecognizable. Yet even in that darkness, God's mercy did not vanish. Among the countless lives walking the earth, there was one man who stood apart. Not by power, not by wealth, not by influence, but by obedience. His name was Noah. Scripture tells us that Noah was righteous, blameless among the people of his time, and that he walked with God. That single phrase, walked with God, meant relationship, attentiveness, and obedience even when obedience made no sense. God did not give Noah a metaphor or a vision open to interpretation. He gave instructions, precise, detailed, unmistakable. He spoke of judgment, but also of salvation. He spoke of destruction, but also of preservation. Then God gave measurements: 137 meters long, 23 meters wide, 3 full stories high. These were not poetic numbers. They were architectural. God was not asking Noah to pray. He was asking Noah to build. Make yourself an ark. With those words, one of the greatest works ever undertaken by human hands began. The Bible tells us what the ark was made of: cypress wood. It tells us why it was built: to preserve life. It tells us how it would function. But it does not describe the daily reality, the sweat, the doubt, the ridicule, and the immense physical challenges Noah faced. Every great structure begins with the ground beneath it. A vessel of such size required vast, stable land, resistant to shifting soil and close to forests that could supply unimaginable amounts of wood. So before a single tree was cut, Noah walked the land. He tested the soil, observed slopes, and watched how moisture settled. There were no instruments, no blueprints, no surveyors. Only experience, observation, and wisdom shaped by years of walking with God. Eventually, he chose a place. Then the work began. Stones were removed by hand. Ancient roots were torn from the soil. Every section of land was leveled and compacted to support thousands of tons of wood. The pre-flood world added another challenge. A mist rose from the earth and watered the ground continually. The soil was constantly moist and unstable. Tools sank. Footings slipped. Wood absorbed moisture. So Noah dug shallow channels to divert excess water away from the site. It was not rain from the sky, but moisture rising from the earth itself. As Noah labored, people passed by. Some laughed, others mocked. There was no sea, no river, no reason except obedience. Noah did not argue. He did not defend himself. He built according to divine instruction. Day after day, year after year, the land became firm. Then came the next challenge: wood. God commanded the ark be made of cypress, massive, dense trees. Felling one required strength and patience. Felling hundreds required discipline. Axes struck wood again and again. Trees groaned and fell with thunderous force. Moving the trunks was even harder. Without wheels or machines, Noah used wooden rollers, ropes, and levers. Meter by meter, the logs moved towards the site. Each trunk delivered was another act of faith. The people could no longer ignore it. The ark was becoming real. Then came construction. At the heart of the ark was the keel, a massive central beam supporting everything. No tree was long enough. So Noah joined beams together using ancient joinery and hardwood pegs. Every joint had to be perfect. Slowly, the keel took shape. And for the first time, the scale of obedience was visible. The ark was rising. The next phase would be even greater. The ribs would soon rise from the backbone, and the ark would begin to take form. With the keel firmly in place, stretching across the prepared ground like the spine of some colossal creature, Noah stood at the threshold of a new and daunting phase. What lay before him was no longer conceptual. It was structural. The ark would now begin to rise. The backbone was ready. Now the ribs had to be raised. These ribs were not decorative beams. They were massive arched timbers designed to shape the hull, distribute weight, and absorb the immense forces the ark would one day face. Lifting such beams tested the limits of human strength. Noah and his sons worked slowly and deliberately. Thick ropes were wrapped around each rib. Wooden levers were driven into the earth. Stones were stacked to serve as anchors. Every movement was calculated because one mistake could shatter weeks of work or cost a life. As the first rib was raised, the sound of straining rope and groaning wood echoed across the land. The beam rose inch by inch until it slid into its carved joint along the keel. Noah paused. He studied the angle. Stones tied to cords were lowered as plumb lines. The rib stood straight and true. Then the second rib followed, then the third. Each rib had been custom-shaped with joints that guided it naturally into position. This was craftsmanship refined by necessity. As more ribs rose, the ark began to reveal itself. Curves emerged. Space was defined. What had once been an abstract command now stood visibly on dry land. Horizontal beams were added, locking the ribs together into a unified frame. Day after day, the structure grew stronger and higher. Weeks turned into months, months into years. When the final rib was secured, the ark stood complete in skeletal form, towering over the land. But strength alone would not save life. God had commanded, "You shall cover the ark inside and out with bitumen." Bitumen had to be drawn from the earth, heated slowly and applied carefully. Fires burned beneath large vessels as thick black resin melted. Layer by layer, the pitch was brushed into every seam and joint. The exterior was sealed first, then the interior. Weeks passed as the resin cooled and hardened. The ark became an enclosed refuge, prepared for an event humanity had never experienced. Then came organization. God commanded, "You shall make compartments in the ark." 3 levels were constructed. Heavy animals were assigned to the lowest deck to keep the center of gravity low. Medium-sized animals occupied the middle level. Birds and smaller creatures were housed above. Strong internal walls separated species. Space was maximized without compromising safety. Ventilation was essential. An opening near the top allowed air to circulate. Internal corridors guided airflow. Light filtered into the ark. Food storage required immense planning. Hay, grains, dried fruits, roots, and water were stored in sealed containers. Entire sections were dedicated to supplies. Waste management was considered carefully. Slightly sloped floors and simple drainage channels prevented disease. The ark was not merely a ship, it was a floating city. And then came the door, large enough for every animal, strong enough to endure the flood. Reinforced beams surrounded its frame. Without metal hinges, it likely rotated on a strong, vertical wooden pivot. Scripture reveals something extraordinary. And the Lord shut him in. Noah built the ark, but God sealed the door. Before the animals arrived, Noah walked the interior one final time. He listened to the wood, checked joints, reinforced beams, and tested hardened pitch. Then something supernatural happened. The animals came. They were not captured. They were not forced. Pairs emerged from forests. Birds descended. Predators walked beside prey without conflict. No chaos, no violence. As the final animals entered, the door closed, sealed by God Himself. The time of preparation had ended. The time of survival was about to begin. The moment the door closed, something changed. Inside the ark, a heavy silence settled. Deep, unfamiliar, absolute. Outside, the world continued for a brief moment, as it always had. People walked, animals moved freely. Life went on, unaware that its final hours had begun. Noah stood still. He felt the sealed door behind him, thick and immovable. The same door he had built with his own hands, now closed by the hand of God Himself. Inside, everything was ready. Animals were secured within their compartments. Food was stored. Water containers were sealed. The structure was reinforced, tight, and strong. Then the earth convulsed. In the 600th year of Noah's life, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. The ground shook violently. Invisible forces tore through rock and soil. From beneath the surface, massive volumes of water erupted upward, flooding valleys and swallowing plains. Inside the ark, the structure trembled. Dust fell from beams. Animals stirred. The ark groaned under the movement of the earth. Then rain began to fall, for the first time in human history. The sky darkened. Thunder rolled endlessly. Torrents of water hammered the ark's roof. Lightning tore through the clouds. Panic erupted outside as waters rose rapidly. Streams became rivers. Rivers became seas. The ark remained grounded as water climbed higher and higher around it, until slowly it lifted. The vessel floated. Wood creaked. Beams adjusted. The ark settled into motion. Outside, the world disappeared beneath endless water. Mountains vanished. Forests were uprooted. Cities were erased. Inside, life was preserved. The rain continued for 40 days and 40 nights. Inside the ark, time lost meaning. Light filtered dimly through the upper opening. Days blended together. Animals were fed. Stalls were cleaned. Life continued amid the chaos. After 40 days, the rain stopped, but the waters prevailed for 150 days. The ark drifted without sail or rudder, carried by God alone. Months passed. Noah listened to the ark's sounds, reinforcing beams when needed, checking seals, trusting God while remaining vigilant. Then Scripture records a turning point. And God remembered Noah. A wind passed over the earth. Slowly, the waters began to recede. The ark descended until one day it came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat. Movement ceased. Stillness returned. Noah waited. He opened the upper opening and fresh air filled the ark. Light poured inside. He released a raven, then a dove. The dove returned. 7 days later, the dove returned again, this time carrying an olive leaf. Hope had returned. Another week passed. The dove was released again and did not return. The earth was healing. After more than a year inside the ark, God spoke again. "Come out of the ark." The door opened. Light flooded in. Animals emerged, species by species, dispersing across the renewed earth. Noah stepped onto solid ground. The smell of wet earth filled the air. Silence reigned. The old world was gone, but life remained. Noah built an altar. He offered a sacrifice of gratitude. God made a promise. Never again would all life be destroyed by water. A rainbow appeared in the sky, a covenant between God and every living creature. Judgment had ended. A new beginning had begun. When Noah stepped onto dry ground, the silence was overwhelming. It was not the silence of emptiness, but the silence that follows catastrophe. The stillness that remains when everything familiar has been erased. The land stretched outward in every direction, washed clean, stripped of its former life, waiting to be reborn. The air felt different. For the first time since entering the ark, Noah breathed freely without the echo of wooden walls around him. The sky opened wide above his head, vast and unbroken. Behind him stood the ark, weathered, scarred, silent. It had fulfilled its purpose. Before building a home or planting a field, Noah built an altar. Among scattered stones and drying mud, he offered a sacrifice, not out of fear, but gratitude. The Bible tells us that the offering was pleasing to God. Then God spoke words of promise. Never again would he destroy all life with a flood. This promise was not only for Noah, but for every living creature. God established a covenant and set a sign in the sky, the rainbow. The rainbow was a reminder of mercy over judgment, restraint over wrath. God then recommissioned humanity. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Life was to continue under a new order. Seasons were established, boundaries were set. Human life was declared sacred. Animals dispersed across the land. Humanity began again through Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The ark would eventually decay, but its meaning would endure. It became a symbol of obedience, faith, and salvation. A reminder that God provides a way of escape before judgment. The ark was not just a vessel of wood. It was faith made visible. The rainbow still appears as a reminder that God keeps his promises. And the story of Noah continues to speak, to warn, to invite, to remind humanity that salvation is offered before judgment. Because of obedience, life endured. The world was restarted, and humanity was given